Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the first one of the year. It's 2025, so we should really wish you a happy new year. We're coming off the back of Plank of the Year, which at the end of 2024 crowned the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, as the biggest plank of last year. Well, let me introduce you to the first panel of the year. It's Russell Quirk, it's Ben Habib, it's Amanda Devlin, and it's returner Howard Cox. Very warm welcome to every single one of you. I hope you had a nice Christmas and I hope you had a good new year. I said at the start of my show this week, the first one back, I'm glad to say that Keir Starmer is just as unpopular now as he was last year. But you're going to kick off with his oppo.
Yeah, not with him, but with Kemi Badenoch,
Yes.
the leader of the Conservative Party, who made
For the moment.
for now, made a bit of a blunder, it seems, with regard to Reform shouting the odds around their membership and that famous ticker.
Yes.
And, of course, she decided, in her wisdom, to cast aspersions with regard to the accuracy.
There was a lot of talk
particular...
of the back end of the ticker, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, so what effectively she said in her tweet was that she didn't believe the numbers and that she had looked into it, or rather one of her so-called technology experts had looked into it, and that it was...
Like the Tories have got a technology expert.
Yeah.
Hello?
Well,
what's his name? James Bond?
Don't think the Tories have got any experts, frankly. So, of course, she made a faux pas because, characteristically, as you would expect, Nigel Farage jumped on it immediately and said, well, look, you're wrong. I'm going to prove that you're wrong. He then went about proving that it was correct by way of going to all sorts of different organisations for them to come back and say, yes, this is verified, the numbers are correct. And, of course, she was asked to apologise. Nigel Farage has capitalised on it. And as we speak, she has not apologised.
And, of course, this is him. What you can see here is Reform transmitting and projecting the numbers onto Conservative Party central office.
Yeah, but the reason that this is also very interesting...
Very led by donkeys inspired.
Led by donkeys, yeah, but very effective. But, of course, the reason that she's the plank is not only has she mistakenly and misguidedly actually cast aspersions over the accuracy of the ticker, but, of course, she has also said in the past that she doesn't make gaffes.
Yeah.
Never makes gaffes at all.
The idiotic thing for Kemi Badenoch here is that she didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why would you draw attention, one, to the fact that Reform's membership is growing, because not everybody's on Twitter, not everybody knows that that's happening.
And important is it's seized out of the Conservatives.
But she's also made it mainstream so that it's been covered everywhere. She's also pointed to the fact as well that the Tories are losing people hand over fist. And I think at one point she even said, oh, but we've got more members as well. We just haven't really counted them because we don't count ours until January.
And of course,
you're kind of going, why are you getting all worked up about numbers?
But Nigel Farage, your old boss, then said, well, actually, since she made that statement, the counter accelerated.
Well, that's my point. I'm actually at the point for Dover and Deal where I stood in the general election. And I get all the details, emails, people paying their 25 quid and the 10 quid for the youngsters as well. And as soon as she made that comment, suddenly it went from about 3 or 4 a day to about 15 a day. And you work that out, multiply that in a month. That's
so she's the best bit of PR that Reform has had for a long time.
The point she could have made, which is a point I've been making for 7 months, is actually Reform only has 3 members. That would have been the pertinent point, as in their genuine members, because actually everyone else is a subscriber. The Tory members actually do collectively have an influence on the Tory party.
And the selection of candidates.
And the selection of candidates, policy making, grassroots comments and all the rest of it. The subscribers, the so-called members that Reform have are subscribers, without wishing to do my old boss down.
They do say they're changing that, don't they? I mean,
they do. They've been saying that for a while.
Yeah,
right?
you'll know more about this than I have. But I mean, they do say that they're changing. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But you know, it seems to me that Kemi Badenoch is the plank here for picking a fight with what is probably the most popular
particularly when there was
right now.
One that she didn't need to.
Right?
Particularly when there was an open goal.
Yeah.
Do you think she had a Christmas tipple, perhaps?
Well, it did go out on Boxing Day, didn't it?
I feel as if she'd maybe...
She doesn't make gaffes. She doesn't make gaffes.
She doesn't, yeah, exactly. So I think maybe she'd just been drinking
Does
and
she
then
make a rum
therefore
punch,
didn't...
though? Would be the
A rum
question.
punch.
I mean, yeah, here's the tweet that she put out, because it was put out. A lot of people who we all know in the sort of parliamentary publicity game have said to me, you know, there's no way that she could have put that out without somebody seeing it. Yeah. But maybe she did, you know, because on Boxing Day you're not surrounded by your acolytes, you're not surrounded by, you know, all the spads that you would normally...
Tweets, yeah.
Although, but the spads have said to me, no, but you wouldn't let the leader put a tweet out like that unless you'd seen it.
The problem is it highlights her weakness as a leader in that she's, which there are a few, it's only early days, but she's got this arrogance about her.
I think that's the problem.
And with that tweet, with that clip we played, you can kind of see that she's got
And
this
you can be
personality.
arrogant.
She thinks she's always right, and you're all wrong, and this is my way or the highway. And
she can be arrogant if she wants to be arrogant, as long as she's good at it.
Well, and you've got to be able to back it up.
But you've got to get everything right, and you can't make a mistake.
But that arrogance was also demonstrated by the fact that about 24 hours later, she doubled down again by having a go at various news channels for giving Nigel Farage
that's right. I forgot about that.
Voice.
Yeah, for saying he shouldn't have a show.
Yeah. And you think, hang on a sec, you're a Conservative Party leader that one would imagine. I mean, do you remember the days of the Conservatives being Conservative, Ben? You have to go back 4 or 5 years.
It's a long time.
Maybe 10
4 or 5 years. You've got to go back a long way.
2010. But I remember the days where Conservative leaders would be all about free speech. Clearly, Kemi Badenoch is not a fan of that.
She's not a fan of that. Nigel Farage, meanwhile, was out and about with some hunters, I think, wasn't he, when he discovered that they'd actually passed the Tory number. Let's have a look.
We've done it. We're through. We're through.
There they were wearing their right-wing barbers there.
It played straight into his
far-right jackets.
It played straight into his hands.
It really was ridiculous. Ben, over to you.
So my first plank of the week, and it's an honour to be on your first show and an honour to put this man forward because, like Starmer, I suspect he'll make a recurring appearance on your show.
Yeah.
His name is Sadiq Khan. Do you remember him from last year?
As long as you don't call him Sir Sadiq Khan, that's fine.
God.
You know, we don't acknowledge that particular title.
Sir Khan.
Sir Khan. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, absolutely right.
I wondered what you said there. I was like, are we allowed to?
It sounds good. Okay. It tickles the mind.
It does.
Get the bleep machine ready.
Yes, sir. Easy to make a mistake on that one.
It is easy to make a mistake. So, I mean, there could be any number of reasons why he should be put forward. But the reason I think he needs to be put forward is, first of all, his knighthood, which is still hot off the press, even though we're a week into the year, or nearly a week into the year, but also his banning of the National Farmers Union from holding protests in Whitehall. So this is a man, a lot of people correctly hold him to account for his poor record as a mayor. But the thing that I find really shocking about Sadiq Khan is that this is a man who jumps on every identity politics bandwagon there is. Yeah. And he had no problem with the BLM marches.
No.
He was absolutely behind all of that.
Yeah.
Leftist, anarchist, anti-police, anti-British movement. Yeah. He had no problem with the Extinction Rebellion protests. You know, they can come and tear up the streets of London, block traffic.
Sit on the road.
Sit on the road, bring our economy to a halt. You know, we are the biggest generator. But he's got an issue with farmers making a legitimate protest about our national farming industry being kicked in the shins by the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Sadiq Khan is a man who is, I would call, a perpetual plank. Yeah. Is it possible to have such a title?
Well, do you know, he almost won Plank of the Year twice in a row, but was pipped at the post by Meghan and Harry. If it wasn't for Meghan and Harry, he would have won the previous 2 years, no question at all.
But he should get a Plank Fellowship, shouldn't he?
He probably should.
He should be just up there.
Like a Plank Hall of Fame.
He should. And, I mean, by banning things as well, we know from what Russell's contributed before to this show, that he's banned all sorts of things being advertised on the Tube network.
Yeah.
Stupid
anything
things
with sugar,
like sugar,
salt.
cake.
Yeah,
Do you remember? Do you remember when
dying, though,
that's all right. That's fine.
I was absolutely horrified by that.
I really was. I found it just sickening.
That was such a weird poster, wasn't it? A woman in absolute, sort of high dudgeon and very happy about the fact that somebody was going to die. And you just thought, what on earth is going on?
But you can't have, Snickers or a Kit Kat or anything, on there.
No.
Or a woman in a bikini.
What about his fireworks this year?
Well,
at least he did have the British flag.
Well, we had the British flag, but the thing that really gets me down, and I can't remember when he started this, but he certainly did it last year and he did it again this year. He says, from the Mayor of London. No, mate. It's not from the Mayor of London. No. It's from our back pockets.
It's from our back pockets. He presents it as if he's, the great impresario. Here I am, and here's my show.
Yeah, it's like a Marie Antoinette type thing,
great,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Let them have fireworks.
Do you remember Harvey Goldsmith, who used to produce all of the sort of the huge big rock acts all over and it would always be Harvey Goldsmith Presents because he was the entrepreneur. He was the guy that put his money up to put this stuff on.
But this ain't his money.
But now, this is a guy who plays with our money. And God knows how much it costs now to put the fireworks
and tries to take the credit for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there is... Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I thought he made a really strange point about his kids saying that he'd sold out.
His kids apparently say he's sold out by taking the honour.
So I thought, where have they learnt that from, for one? Right. And two, it's as if he's trying to have a dig. He's trying to get his point across, as well as just taking the
because he'll take the knighthood,
although
at the same time he'll despise the empire.
Even
though he is a knight now of the British Empire.
Sounds like his kids have got a lot more wisdom than he has. I mean, of course, we also know that over history there's been a procession of left-wing politicians that have always said, abolish the House of Lords, honours are outrageously elitist, and then what happens as soon as we get Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, he starts dishing out the jobs like confetti.
Let's get rid of the House of Lords. Oh no, let's give one to Sue Gray.
Every single member of the left that gets bestowed on an honour says, thank you very much, I'll take it.
Guys, I actually stood in against him, and obviously I got fairly trounced by him. It's the third election he's won. And, you know, he's been a great job of failure. And he's got rewarded for it.
But Howard, do you think he's won or Labour have won?
18% of the vote. 82%.
No, but it's not him, it's Labour.
Didn't want him.
Well, it kind of is him, though, because Labour
vote.
Didn't beat Boris Johnson. So, I mean, it's not just a Labour vote. No. There's more to it than that. I don't know what it is, because I don't meet anyone that tells me what a great job he's doing. I've never spoken to anyone in London who voted for him. I've never met anyone who thinks he's doing well.
Can you think of a single metric on in which London is better as a result of his contribution?
They're all declining terribly, except crime's going up.
Yeah.
It's hard to think of one thing.
Well, he keeps telling us the air's cleaner, but we don't believe that, because that's not true.
Except on the tube.
Yeah, well, no, it's not cleaner anyway.
Anyway.
No, he had to lean on Imperial College to try and get them to back up his study on air quality. Do you remember that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Amanda, over to you.
Well, sadly, we've missed Christmas now, so we're going to have to look ahead to 2025 Christmas Day, and there's a gift that you could get. You can go online onto Just Stop Oil's website, and you can buy a T-shirt for 20 quid. 20 quid?
That's quite a lot for a T-shirt.
Quite
I mean,
a lot.
I don't buy many T-shirts.
It's got like a skull on the back, and it's got just says Just Stop Oil on the front. It can be bright orange or black. For 20 quid. Turns out, though, that these are being shipped over from 4,000 miles away from been made in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, yes.
But they make a big fuss when you go onto the website. They make a big fuss about them saying, you know, that there's no oil in this. It's all great. You know, this is amazing. You should buy this and give money to our people who are going to probably spend it on going on their holidays on a flight over.
But they've got the carbon footprint of a Range Rover.
But they've got exactly. And you just think, I don't know how much more hypocritical they can get. I mean, they kind of. I've nominated them a fair few times.
We haven't heard too much from them since they started getting locked up, though, which just goes to show you that, you know, bizarrely, if you lock people up and punish them for committing crime, they stop doing it.
If you lock people up who've actually done something that has, you know, caused misery, pain.
Yeah, also, the weather might have something to do with that, I suspect.
They don't like
their fair weather protesters.
Yeah, well, when it's freezing cold, they don't like sitting on the ground very
they're
much.
away, aren't they? They're on holiday.
They're skiing at the moment. Mostly stars.
Yeah.
You know.
And so
in the Caribbean.
How much nylon is in these T-shirts?
I mean,
why would you assume that she would know how much nylon?
The reason why Mark's saying that is that's made from oil.
Yeah. Well, of course.
It does say specifically there's no oil, so I've just taken
I don't believe the word for it.
that.
If it's all cotton or something,
No,
it'd be more expensive.
Transportation. Exactly.
Yeah, but don't worry.
And
just to make up for the fact that there's not any oil in it, they've used slave labour to make this. That's fine. That's not a problem at all. Howard, down to you. Jess Phillips.
Yeah.
Very up to the minute, this one.
Exactly. I mean, this is actually a very serious point I've got to get across here, because what's happening up in the various parts of, 50 places across the country, but notably in places like Bradford, Oldham and Oxford, these places, is we're talking about these grooming gangs. I'm going to change grooming for rape.
Yeah.
It's rape gangs.
They are rape gangs,
and, you know, all that's happened in Oldham, for example, they've actually asked for a national inquiry.
Right.
And in her wisdom, Jess Phillips has said, no, we're going to keep it local.
Who's now the rather laughably called safeguarding minister, right?
Well, equalities and safeguarding, yes.
Well, she's supposed to be looking after child and female welfare, safety.
Yeah, right.
And that's part of the things, part of her portfolio. For what the hell is she refusing to do it? I think it's only two reasons. Either they think rape's not that important of an issue or a crime, or they're protecting
child rape, not just rape.
Child rape, absolutely.
And gang rape of children, the gang raping of children.
It's either they think that's not important, or they're protecting someone. And I'm afraid the second point I'm trying to get across here is yet another cover-up. Yeah. We're seeing Southport cover-up. Yeah. We're seeing cover-ups everywhere. We need a national inquiry. We need to get to the bottom of this. This has been going on for too long. We're looking at 50,000 children. Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
And all with a similar MO, if you look at what's been going on. And if you look at how nobody really looked into it, how the police were not encouraged to do so, how local councillors were warned off, how MPs were warned off. You know, Simon Danchuk talks about having been told not to get involved in Rochdale. He was pressured by senior Labour Party officials. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing stinks to high heaven.
Jess Phillips, of course, in opposition, sung a rather different tune.
She did. I think we've got a clip of what she used to think about all of this.
I think that what I will not let happen is for the far right to use the exploitation of vulnerable girls in this country and what happened in Cologne for their own ends when they've done absolutely nothing about sexual violence and the culture of sexual assault until it fits their purpose.
I don't know what's got to do with the far right. Sorry.
It's not a political issue.
It's got nothing to do with the
That's
right
exactly right,
or the
Ben.
far right or whatever
exactly
right you want to talk about.
Cut the politics out of this. Let's get to the truth and get to make the point, which is what Simon Danzig said. He wasn't allowed to say what ethnicity is behind this.
Right.
Pakistan, I'm afraid, is behind this.
Yeah, of course
their culture.
Yeah, but this is the problem. The Labour Party have got an issue with admitting that, and until they do admit that they've got a problem admitting it, then we're never going to get to the bottom of anything. And that's why they keep saying, let's just shove it to the background, let's not investigate.
But getting to the bottom of it should also include bringing people to justice that were complicit in covering this stuff up over decades, by the way. And the fact that because it was covered up by councillors, council leaders, senior members of different police forces, more and more children
police
were
and
raped.
crime commissioners.
Yeah, more and more children were raped as a direct consequence of that enablement.
Right.
And it's also happening here in London. And what I want to see is the mainstream media call for this public inquiry, get right behind it.
Yeah.
Thank heavens for TalkTV. You do get behind this and get to this, and you're very honest with.
Well, of course, you know what the new Labour line is now, because I've heard it this week, towards the end of the week, as people were saying, why is Jess Phillips saying this? She responded to the Oldham Council letter by saying that, in this instance, we think you should investigate it yourselves, right? They're now saying, what she meant was, we might do an inquiry, but it won't just be about Oldham. It will be about everything. Well, that's not what they've asked for.
And how long is that going to take
Exactly.
them to organise that? Push it back and push it back.
A council probe as such won't have teeth, won't have legs. Obviously, something on a government level will, because it's going to be much more senior, more far-reaching. For it just to be a council probe.
But isn't it funny, though, that this story has been rumbling around for decades, right? And suddenly Elon Musk gets involved in it. And Elon Musk, obviously, as the owner of X and a fairly controversial character, has suddenly got everybody pinned out. Keir Starmer's going like this. He's over in his holiday home going, what's he saying now? Because they don't know how to deal with him. They can't control Elon Musk. They can control the police, they can control the councils, but they can't control X and they can't control Elon Musk.
He's actually said Jess Phillips should be put in jail.
Yeah.
He's also said who was actually looking after the prosecution times of the CPS. He was the director of
he's not getting everything right. It does. He's not getting everything right, but it doesn't actually matter.
But he's getting people to talk about this and bring it to the front.
But he's actually gone even further than that. In the last day or two, he's actually said that his view is that Jess Phillips is a rape apologist.
Yeah,
I saw
it. Yeah, and what Musk does really well is, and our politicians aren't brave enough to do it. I'm certainly not as brave as he is, and I suppose being a billionaire,
but he doesn't have to care, does he?
He doesn't have to care.
He can't be cancelled until he owns it.
What he does really well is by putting out something sounds extreme, he shifts the Overton window. Right. We are all now... He shines a light. We're now prepared to talk about it. And I think the reason the Labour Party is so reluctant to actually do anything about it is because it reveals the fundamental failure of multiculturalism. Rampant immigration... Right. With multiculturalism given a protected blanket through the legislative framework, regulatory and legislative framework of diversity, equity and inclusion. They are protected, and we do not have the courage to challenge them. And whereas if we hadn't had rampant immigration, and if we'd said to people who come to this country, actually, you have to adopt our values, our culture...
And if you break the law, we will put you in prison.
And justice is blind. Since when did justice in this country cease to be blind? That's a real problem.
Absolutely right. And how is it possible? And how is it possible that in some of the instances that we've been looking at again this week, the police turn up at a house where there are 5, adult male Pakistani men and one 12-year-old girl.
And they arrest the
12-year-old girl for being drunk and disorderly.
There's a clue
and they leave
there,
the 5 men.
There's a clue there.
Well, there is a clue there, and everybody knows that the Labour Party would like to keep that very, very quiet. But of course, Elon Musk, as you say, doesn't care, and he's not going to stop. And it's actually quite glorious to watch. It's a bit like Donald Trump when he did they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. And everybody went, he's gone insane. But actually what happened was everybody started looking at the problem of immigration in the central part of the American Midwest, which nobody knew was a problem. And suddenly they're going, well, there's a load of Venezuelan drug gangs there. How did they get there? And suddenly it became an issue.
We need these big voices to be heard, because they are big voices. And as a consequence, there's then an encouragement, an imperative that these things will actually be debated and and taken through a process so that there's justice.
And the police should be worried, and so should the councils, and all of the people who got involved in this, in the cover-up, should really be now terrified of what's about to happen.
But the only thing I do agree with Kemi is the fact that we've got to join the dots across the country.
And she's asked for a public inquiry as well.
Yeah, it's a bit...
I mean, it is a bit rich.
So as you say, you know, public inquiry. My fear, whenever they say public inquiry, I think 3 years, no one really gets raked over the coals. I want a criminal investigation into each and every one of these people now.
Exactly. Absolutely right. I think, you know, it's a good point, because public inquiries, generally speaking, don't lead to anything. We've had one public inquiry, which came out with a load of recommendations in 2022, and nothing really changed. And there's still people getting done for it now, because it's still going on.
Well, and
if you talk to Maggie Oliver, the woman who was largely responsible for setting this whole thing out in the first place, she says it's still happening.
And how is she not Dame Maggie Oliver?
She's incredible,
I know.
Exactly.
MBE, OBE, or whatever. I mean, what that woman has done for this cause.
What we got Sir Sadiq Khan, when you compare that.
Exactly.
Right. Well, he doesn't want Maggie Oliver in the House of Lords. I mean, she might actually start talking and start telling a few stories about what's been going on inside the Labour Party. But there we are. Coming up, we're going to talk about Christmas and, of course, Palestine, because you two things, you can't separate them, according to Bear Grylls anyway. And the Prime Minister might be making an appearance as well. Fresh from being Plank of the Year, he's back on the first Plank of the Week of 2025. It's all coming up. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's the first one of the year. It is 2025. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We've got some great nominations already, and I'm going to go back to just before Christmas to include a man by the name of Bear Grylls. Now, lots of people have got a view of Bear Grylls. I can say what mine is. I think he's a bit of a charlatan, to be honest. You know, pretends to go out cooking stuff in the open air, and he's, you know, this great man about sort of the countryside. But in fact, he turns out to be just as big of a plank as an awful lot of other people, because over the period of Christmas, he put out a Christmas message to his followers, which already tells you he's up his own backside, doesn't he? Who does he think he is? The Queen? You know, my Christmas message, right? Now, unfortunately, his Christmas message, he wrote this. It was on X, of course. In these next few days, billions of us around the world celebrate the birth of a Middle Eastern refugee who 2,000 years ago changed the course of the world forever. Let me tell you some of his story. This is just a short extract from near the beginning of the adventure, when Miriam, i.e. Mary, a young, poor and no doubt terrified Palestinian girl, gives birth in a rundown animal pen to a baby who was foretold for hundreds of years. He basically made out that that Mary and Joseph were Palestinian refugees, even though Palestine didn't exist at the time, and even though historically they are obviously and very clearly Jewish.
Well, and the other inference, of course, is that because Jesus is apparently a refugee, that I guess that should encourage us to open all of our doors to as many refugees as possibly Britain.
Because one of them might be the son of God. Oh no, there he is, nicking a load of stuff from the co-op. What's he doing?
I wonder how many refugees Bear Grylls has got in his mansion, wherever he is.
I would suggest probably zero.
I think none.
None.
Hasn't he got his own island? I'm sure I've watched something where he's got his own.
I wish he'd go and live on it.
Well, yeah, and turn the internet off. Just go there.
The campaign against.
He's got plenty of room to house them all.
The campaign against anti-Semitism said, a quick historical note, Mary was a Jewish woman from Judea under Roman rule. The region wasn't called Palestine until 100 years later, when the Judeans, basically the Jews, were exiled, and Emperor Hadrian renamed it Syria. Palestina, after the Bar Kokhba revolt to try to sever the Jewish connections to land. And of course, one of the problems with the people who purport this myth that the Son of God was not a Jew tend to be Nazis.
Yes.
You know, who during the Second World War and beforehand, when they were forming themselves into this horrible, you know, fascistic group, they didn't want any connection between Christianity and Judaism, so they made out that that Jesus wasn't actually a Jew.
But
he's kind of feeding into this really horrible, nasty rhetoric, as well as getting it completely wrong.
Bear Grylls also come from a very, very wealthy,
very
middle-class
posh
family and had a very expensive education. It seems like that was wasted.
It really was. I think we've got a little clip of him doing his little shtick. Let's have a look.
So it is Christmas Eve, always such a special time, but I wanted to read a little bit from the greatest story ever told. This bit of the story is set in a place in Palestine, first century Palestine, called Bethlehem.
No, it wasn't actually. I mean, it's completely wrong.
I think the greatest story ever told was when his last series was cancelled.
Yeah, that was also good. Well, as you might not be surprised to hear, he had to take the tweet down and had to reissue it without saying that Jesus was in fact a Palestinian. And a community note was posted onto X that said they were not refugees. Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken. So Joseph and Mary travelled to Judea to the town of Bethlehem because Joseph belonged to his house and the line of David. So it's nothing to do with Palestine. Palestine didn't exist. There was no Palestinian refugees at that time.
Why do we need a Christmas message from bare-blooded
I think
Grylls,
he should have just stuck to saying Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, that would have been easier.
Was there anything else he needed to say?
But isn't this the trouble, though, with all these virtue signalling planks? You know, they have to make some kind of point and go, oh, yeah, but I was really clever because I pointed out that,
he's channeling
they're
Gary
like
Lineker
refugees.
there, rather, isn't he?
He is.
I mean, how horrifying.
Maybe you should do Match of the Day. Bear Grylls, Match of the Day. You know, Palestine versus Israel.
And yeah, goodness sake, give us a religious narrative every time he comments on a football.
It is absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? But the plankery will continue, I'm sure, throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
Anyway, Russell, over to you with the Prime Minister.
Talking of which, yes, so as you say, fresh from winning Plank of the Year,
Yes.
Keir Starmer, tragedy over Christmas, of course, his brother died, all very sad, and obviously we all regret that. As a consequence of that, Keir Starmer said, look, despite the fact that I banged on for days and days and days about needing a holiday, because I've done this job for, about 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, right.
So, he has to go away and rest. Decided, despite saying that, the next day to go on holiday.
Yeah.
And he went to Madeira. Here's the toboggan in Madeira, which is very, very famous. And, of course, there's a huge queue. Some people say, some of the Brits that were in the queue, that it was 3 hours long. Keir Starmer, of course, being Keir Starmer, decided, no, I'm the Prime Minister. I am of the elite. I'm from Islington. And as a consequence of that, I will go straight to the front of the queue with my family, stick them on the toboggan.
Maybe he had the speedy boarding tobogganing ticket,
Can I just say, it's a bit like his premiership and the Labour government over the next few months. It was then downhill all the way.
Yeah. Only Keir Starmer would decide to go on a tobogganing holiday and end up in Madeira. Because most toboggans are in the snow, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it doesn't snow much.
Apparently there were crowds and crowds and crowds there, hence the 3-hour wait. Lots and lots of Brits taking
they're all booing it
And they're going to say they're all booing
Were
it.
they?
Get to the back of the queue. Who do you think you are? You might be the Prime Minister, but we waited 3 hours.
This was an ideal opportunity for him to be humble, couldn't it? To stand there, I'll stand with my people and I'm happy to walk with them.
He could have chatted to people.
Yeah, but he can't.
More votes. Become popular.
Ben, there's a thought.
Apparently, he didn't even go on it.
No, but
it was his kids that went on it. So the kids could have just queued up as normal people, and no one would have been.
No one would have known who they were.
No one likes queue jumpers.
No.
Remember the whole
Well, look at what happened to Holly and Phil. I mean, that was the end of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the beginning of the end because it caused huge trouble between them as a
You can do a lot in Britain and get away with it, but if you start jumping queues...
In fact, I think one of the highlights of the Queen lying in state was the queue.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We talked about the queue because it's what we do.
And David Beckham.
David Beckham
stood in the queue and waited for his turn and waited for hours, and that's why we love David Beckham.
Yeah.
And he should have got a knighthood. He didn't get a knighthood,
He didn't get the knighthood.
They're never going to give him
Can you
one, are
imagine
they?
standing next to David Beckham for 10 hours? I'd be in heaven.
I don't think you're going to be standing up, would you?
There's probably a line of women going the other way.
I'd have to ask for a piggyback.
But Mike, I know we have Keir Starmer on every week, but for absolute good reason.
No, but absolutely right. And also,
There's something every week.
Also, he went on holiday, right? And only, again, Starmer could do this. He didn't actually admit that he was going on holiday because he can't do that. So he didn't deputise anyone. If you remember, Tony Blair famously went on holiday and left John Prescott in charge, who made great hay about it and held up that jar with a crab in it and goes, "This is my pet crab called Peter," which was very funny. But of course, he couldn't do that, so he was still working. So while he was away, he pre-recorded a Christmas message, or a New Year message, rather. Let's have a look at it.
Wherever and however you're celebrating tonight, on behalf of the government, Happy New Year. Here's to a year of changing Britain for the better.
Yeah, good luck with that. Mike, what an absolute plank. And the only thing that everyone said to me was, whose apartment is he using?
Yeah, is that Lord Ali's?
Was it Lord Ali's place in Madeira?
What spad advised him to mention England when he's talking about the United Kingdom?
I know.
UK flag.
I know. Very good point. Very good point.
But also,
he gets everything wrong.
No wonder we keep nominating him for plank, because he's actually literally made of wood. I mean, look at how
he really
wooden
is,
his delivery is. I mean, honestly, he's got no charisma whatsoever.
No, he doesn't seem to realise either that he doesn't have any charisma, and he keeps saying things that are so untrue.
Yeah.
But yet he keeps saying
someone's
them.
writing this stuff for him to approve and then deliver. And presumably at the end of that, all of his advisors clap and say, "Well done, Prime Minister. That's fantastic."
I haven't gotten over the countdown for turning the Christmas tree.
Yeah, 4. You can't 3. Every time you do it, just know who it is.
That will live here at Talk Towers.
It will. Yeah, and then at the end, yay! You just kind of, his heart just sinks, and you just go, "Oh my God!" You should be married to him. No wonder she doesn't want to go around with him much. I mean, I don't even know if she's in Madeira with him.
She just uses him for like Taylor Swift tickets and stuff, and then she's off.
Oh, I mean, just ridiculous. Yeah, she took a quick trip to Washington DC. That was the last time she went anywhere with him. She didn't fancy, going to Samoa for 28 days, or 56 hours on a plane or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. But he just can't get anything right. He's due back this weekend, apparently, because he's going to be answering all sorts of questions about, like we said earlier, the grooming gangs. He's going to be answering all sorts of questions about net zero, because there's now talk that Ed Miliband is off his rocker, and they've got to sort of rein him in a bit.
He needs to be put in a cupboard somewhere.
Before he kills off the Labour government altogether.
But when you say answer a question, we also know that I don't think in any PMQ session since he's been Prime Minister he's actually answered a question.
No.
I don't think he has.
They never do that. The whole thing is deflection.
They should be held, Ben. I think they should be held criminally accountable for not answering the question.
I would change the format altogether and just make it a yes or no answer. So you can only answer yes or no, right? You can't start waffling on about how great you are or how brilliant.
A lie detector.
Yeah, get Jeremy Kyle in there.
A little buzz. Yeah. Something horrible.
It would just be a non-stop buzz. You wouldn't be able to hear anything.
And how long?
It would be far more entertaining.
How long is he going to use the excuse it's the previous government? Always pointed to it's your fault. He can't go on.
He can't. He can't. No, it's absolutely ridiculous. Right, Ben, over to you. Local councils.
Local councils. Now, the story here is that 2,100 days have been given over to people permission to work from the beach on holiday, effectively.
Yeah.
And this is particularly egregious when you think that there are 317 councils in this country.
Right. Are there really?
317 councils in this country, making a loss this year of £2.5 billion, forecast to make a loss of £9.5 billion by 2026. Can you imagine? 171 out of those 317 councils haven't been able to get audited results filed for the years since 2018 because they're basically bust and no one can go through their
They don't want to
numbers.
show the books to anyone.
They don't want to show the books. The books are probably cooked.
Yeah.
And the auditors won't sign off. So you've got a council system that is completely broken, and we know that on the receiving end as members of the populace, because potholes are everywhere, the police aren't doing their job. Right. We can come back to Sadiq Khan for a moment if we need to, and so on and so forth. And yet, they're given permission to work from home habitually.
Right.
They have the benefit of the Working Time Directive, even though we've left the European Union. And now we discover that actually, frankly, they can sit on a beach and do their job.
Wasn't there one case where one particular employee, I'm not sure which the council was, worked from Ibiza for 4 years?
Yeah.
Right?
4 years.
I missed that one.
On the beach in Ibiza.
Came back once a month until they discovered Zoom, and then they didn't come back at all.
Somebody said to
Promote that man.
Yeah. Somebody said to me that is it not illegal to operate from abroad if you're a British taxpayer? There's some kind of wrinkle that says that you have to be in the country a certain amount of time, or you cease to be a British taxpayer and therefore you pay your tax somewhere else. I'm not quite sure, but there's some wrinkle to that anyway.
But anyway, it's absurd, isn't it, that we have a completely broken council system and those who work for councils are given this sort of treatment. And I will just remind people who are viewing at the moment that when the employers' national insurance rate went up, the public sector was excused of it.
Because they're getting a refund, aren't they?
They're getting a refund. So they're not paying, they're getting more money in their back pockets for sitting on a beach in Ibiza for 4 years while our roads and our public services are trashed.
It is extraordinary.
Ben, don't get me started on all of the money that the local government gets. So when I used
Council
to work,
tax up.
Yeah, but I used to work on a local paper, and I'd be in the council, and you knew that the council leader was being paid 2-3 times what the Prime Minister was earning, and yet everything was falling apart. And they would blame the government. And it was just a back and forth all the time. It's so frustrating.
They've got so much money,
everyone.
but they don't. And I used to have this when I was working up at Edinburgh, because the leader of Edinburgh City Council, the chief executive, as it's called, back in sort of 15 years ago, was making £500,000 a year. And they said, it's because they've got such a big budget, because the budget was some ludicrous amount of money, like 40 million quid or something, And they were going, this is why if they were running a company, they'd get paid this much money. Yeah, but you're not running a company. You're running a load of people in white vans driving around, and people
who are in Ibiza
bins, right? It's not exactly high level.
They would also, I mean, my experience, I was a councillor for 8 years, and what I witnessed frequently was the perpetual failure of such chief executives and senior council officers. They'd be dismissed very, very quietly and given massive payouts.
And big pensions, right?
Big pensions, so basically final salary pensions. So you leave at 60k, and for the rest of your life you're on 60,000.
No accountability.
And I think I read a stat recently, actually, is it something like a third or 40% of all council tax now goes to paying civil service pensions?
No, it's worse than that.
More
it's
than that.
80%, right, of all of your council tax goes towards the salaries and the pensions of everyone that works for the council.
Yeah. And when we say work...
Well, but that's what the money's going. That's where it's all going. And all you got to do is look around. I mean, we were going to make them a separate plank, but I'll just give an honorary mention here. Edinburgh City Council this year, who decided to cancel the Hogmanay celebrations and the fireworks on account of the weather, which hadn't happened yet. And they decided that they'd looked into the crystal ball and gone, it's going to be really bad weather.
And the result was,
the result was
as much as 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, it was 20 miles an hour, the wind, which didn't stop the fairground from operating, which didn't stop the Ferris wheel in the middle of Edinburgh from going round and round and round, and which did stop, however, about 50,000 people who had flown in from around the world for the celebrations, who weren't able to look at anything. It's a complete disaster.
Extraordinary.
Absolutely ridiculous. Incredible. Well, anyway, listen, we've still got plenty to do. Those are your council members there. Coming up, we're going to talk about supermarkets. We're going to talk about more shopping, because Easter's on the way, and also the trains. Who can forget the striking train drivers and their other mateys who keep saying that they need more money? This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. Amanda, over to you. It's supermarket special.
Supermarkets. I was horrified to go into Waitrose, back where my mum lives, and see on Christmas Eve, I was doing like a last-minute booze run just in case it ran out, case of emergency.
It's always a worry, isn't it?
And
what if we run out?
Emergency. It's always, it could happen. So went in there, and I was, rather than seeing, like chocolates for Christmas to pick up some last-minute buys, it was actually Easter egg chocolate. So it was the whole back of the store.
Like a big display.
Was a huge display of all of these Easter eggs on Christmas Eve.
That's bonkers.
So I walked
Was
in
anybody
there,
actually
see
buying
it.
them?
So everyone was going up to it, and you could just hear everyone going, oh my goodness, and then like kind of storming off. No, it was fully stocked. They were just getting it ready.
Months away. I mean, they'll go out a date, won't they, before Easter?
You would think.
You would think. I think we've got some tweets, because an awful lot of people got involved in social media. The man hasn't been born yet, and we've already rolled out the Easter eggs. In fact, they're executing him at Easter, because that's what happens, isn't it? So crucifixion before birth. It's the sort of Doctor Who
This is
TARDIS
like Bear
scenario.
Grylls has designed this whole thing. It's all Bear Grylls is doing, because he's just trying to mess with the whole thing. I mean, what it comes down to, it's all commercialisation. So it's just about making money. But can you just give us until maybe the new year?
But I was complaining as well back in November, because it seemed to me that earlier than ever we started lighting Christmas trees and the street lights were going up. Covent Garden, I think the tree was lit on
middle of October,
November the 13th. Or something ridiculous like that, which is too early.
Way too early.
I mean, it shouldn't really happen until December, in my view.
I think it should be December 1st for all of that stuff. But now it's just getting pushed into it. It's like you're getting Halloween stuff in the summer. It's just you're trying to catch up all the time with something. And
so eventually we're going to have Christmas, Easter, Halloween all at the same time.
Well, I do. It'll be a sort of continuous thing. You know what I saw, and I've said this last year, for the first time, I saw people decorating their houses for Halloween like they do for Christmas. Back down in sort of East London where I am, they've got, entire houses where they've got the whole garden done out.
Over the top.
Yeah, totally over the top. And, like Christmas lights except for Halloween.
Yeah.
Have you seen those weirdos who...
Which ones?
There's a lot
of the ones in the building here. No, not those weirdos.
You've got about the rest of the panel.
No, not those people following you around. Jeremy's not here this week.
One less weirdo to worry about.
Which weirdos?
They'll put up their Christmas tree for Halloween, and they'll make it Halloweeny. They'll take that off,
really? No,
they'll redo it, and they'll do their Christmas decorations. Ooh. Then they'll get ready for Valentine's Day, and then into Easter, and just keep rotating the whole way around.
Really?
With the tree up.
They're what we used to call lazy.
Well, I suppose they're getting their money's worth from the tree. But this is what I was shocked at with the Halloween sort of house dressings that were being done, because I'd never seen that until last year. Never seen that before.
Yeah, it's weird. Isn't it? Big thing from the US, I guess.
Yeah, very strange. Now, Howard, you normally talk about cars, but today you're going to talk about trains.
It's but I've had to use the car because the trains are on strike.
The trains are on strike.
The Avanti West Coast line. The unions, and I think it's Mick Lynch's boys. You know, we all.
It's the RMT, yeah.
Yes, they actually had a walkout. This is the second walkout. I think infecting about. I think the figure is 80,000 West Coast passengers were hit by a second walkout.
Yeah. And
the reason is simply the rest days. They were asked to come in on their rest days to do some overtime, and they're complaining by how much.
Yeah.
So they decided to walk out. The people who actually did come in were the managers, and they were paid at their rate, twice the rate that they, that they were.
Well, they're
promised.
getting paid. Apparently, if you come in on a Sunday, and these are the train managers, you get 600 quid. Yeah. And apparently, the RMT says it's not enough.
Exactly.
For one shift.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
It goes on and on and on. And we've talked about councils, and we've talked about Sadiq Khan, we've talked about all sorts of things, but we're always going to have a plank of the week.
Yeah.
Must be for a trade union.
Yeah, got to be. Well, you know what they're doing now, because there's the two Micks, as I call them. There's Mick Whelan, who's from ASLEF, that's the Train Drivers Union, and there's Mick Lynch, who's the RMT guy. And they're just playing, Tweedledee and Tweedledum now.
They're taking the mick, aren't they?
One of them, yeah, exactly, very good. One of them goes in and gets a deal, and then the other one goes, oh, hang on a minute, you've just given him a deal, can I have that deal as well? Let's have a look. Here's Mick Lynch talking on breakfast television.
Over an 11-hour shift, what would that equate to?
Well, that would work out about £250, but a manager working that shift would get £300 as a bonus, and they would get their wages on top of that.
Yeah, but that's because they're managers and they're managing,
Yeah.
so
Right.
they're a higher level in the corporate hierarchy.
One of the things that's happened over the past year, and I don't know why it's happened, is that there's a whole load of train drivers on Twitter, right? Loads of them.
Oh, yeah.
And I fight with them practically
I do.
week in, week out. And they're all like, I could do your job, you couldn't do mine. And I'm going,
I think I could.
You know what? I'm pretty sure I could press a button to go forwards and stop.
Exactly.
And then, go backwards a little bit, open the doors.
It's literally driving.
Oh, no, they don't do the doors. Somebody else does the doors.
It's literally driving in a straight line. They just have a dead man's hand, which is stop and go.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, literally a 5-year-old.
Yeah, but they say that it's much more difficult than that because, sometimes it's foggy, right?
Have to worry about lights.
One guy actually the other day said, there's no warning signs inside the cab if anything goes wrong. And you're going, well, that's clearly rubbish, isn't it? Because you've got things called signals, which are red or green. Yeah. And if it's red, you stop. And if it's green, you go. I mean, it seems to me that it's not that complicated.
But there is a sinister aspect to the two Micks, which is, when you really push them, which, you've certainly done on your show, they admit that they're simply anti-government anarchists.
Of course they are.
Yeah. They're communists. Yeah, they're communists.
Good old-fashioned. In fact, they're so old-fashioned communists. They don't like the European Union. They're actually pro-Brexit.
And I've definitely heard Mick Lynch talking
everything meets round at the other side, doesn't it?
But this typifies it. I've definitely heard Mick Lynch talking about the redistribution of wealth, which is a Marxist doctrine.
Yeah.
So this isn't about members. This isn't about making sure that train drivers are even more closeted than they have been over decades. This is, the politics of envy, jealousy, and this ridiculous communistic kind of attempt to make us all equal. Well, I'm afraid, Mick, we're not all equal. I don't want to be a train driver. You definitely couldn't do what I do or what he does or what these guys do. So why you're all on £90,000 to £100,000 a year, God only knows.
Meanwhile, train fare's going to go up.
Right.
And Joe Public is the ones that are going to suffer as usual sort of thing. And they're talking about nationalising them.
Also, everything. I mean, again, because we cover this quite a lot, I hear stories all the time from people who know people that work on the trains. They have situations where you're not allowed to drive for more than about 2 or 3 hours as a train driver, for example. So if you get put on a shift from Euston to take the train up to, say, Edinburgh, you're not allowed to take it all the way. You have to get off halfway up, right?
And swap.
And you have to have a rest in between, right? And then you can't swap because the train obviously has to go. So the train goes and you have to wait to come back on another train. But obviously you have to be careful not to overstay your time on that train because otherwise you have to get paid overtime because you've only got a 6-hour shift to fill. So if you go for 2.5 hours that way and then you wait for half an hour and then that train's a bit late, you're not allowed to be on it. And then also what they do is sometimes you get stranded. One guy rang me the other day and said, my brother's a train driver and he got taken up, he had to take a train up to Newcastle, but there wasn't one coming back that suited him. So they got a cab for him to come all the way back to London.
About 500 quid.
And that's what goes on. This is the kind of stuff they do.
My favourite remnant of the 1970s kind of unionistas, though, is this thing that if they're on a break, so they're sitting there in their kind of, in their room on a break.
You're not allowed to talk
get an hour. 55 minutes in. Manager walks past, says, all right, Jim. Right.
Yeah.
My hour resets.
Have to start again.
They have to start the hour again.
Yeah.
And just, you know, what it's important to me. My daughter's 33 years of old. She drives a 44-ton truck.
Yeah.
Articulated truck. And you try reversing those things. And
I can imagine.
They're double artic.
That's proper.
We're talking about skill.
Yeah.
She gets 35 grand a year.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's not forget, as soon as they came in, they gave Aslev 15% of a pay rise. And then Aslev went straight away on strike again. And that was Louise Haigh, the convicted fraudster, who used to be the Secretary of State for Transport. Well done to Keir Starmer. What a top man. Right, coming up, I'm afraid it's the return of the Duchess. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Year. We are in the final furlong, ladies and gentlemen. We've had some fantastic nominations, and I have to say, incredibly, as Keir Starmer won Plank of the Year at the end of last year, 2024, there was no mention of Harry and Meghan in the top 10, which I think is the first time in about 3 years.
Radar, weren't
they were sort of off the radar. I mean, he kept sort of reappearing in London every 5 minutes to sue some more people and be told to be sent home with a flea in his ear. But we haven't seen much of Meghan. She started up with the amazing new business that she was launching called, what is it, American Riviera Orchard, which is apparently now stuck in all sorts of legal ramifications.
But also it means that
she's not allowed to use the name.
But it means we've been deprived of your impression.
Oh, yeah, I haven't done it for a long time. I'll have to do it, won't I? But I'll tell you what, first, why don't we look and see the new Netflix show that Meghan is producing, or starring in fact. Here it is.
Michelle.
Let's go. I've always loved taking something pretty ordinary and elevating it. Surprising people with moments that let them know I was really thinking of them.
What? This is probably one of the most glamorous moments of my life.
Harry, let's do a new Netflix show. Harry. I mean, it's basically a cookery show filmed in somebody else's house with somebody else's friends and somebody else's food.
It's complete fakery.
It's complete fakery, and it's all about Meghan. Yeah. And Harry only appears right at the end of the clip, just literally giving her a hug, and that's it.
Well, wise
so it's almost like he's out of the picture.
Wise judgment. Are we expected to believe that that's her daily kind of her daily routine?
Here I am pouring some olive oil into a jar of hummus.
All I do all day, I bake cakes, I go out flower arranging.
Yeah.
This is a massive but bound to fail PR stunt.
You would think so, yeah. I mean, people say that she's trying to be some kind of influencer now. But I mean, this is what we're left with.
Martha Stewart, what happened to her?
She went to jail for insider trading, and now does cooking shows with Snoop Dogg. I mean, maybe you'd pay to see that. I don't know.
But wasn't it great when she said, I like taking something simple and elevating it?
Yeah.
What's she doing about Harry?
That's what she does with Harry. Yeah. He is a bit simple. Well, I guess it's time to decide who should win. I'm sort of reluctant to give it to Meghan Markle because it's almost as though she doesn't deserve it. She hasn't been in the running for such a long time. It's almost like she's...
You've got to work at it.
Back in.
It's kind of a cameo appearance. It's like, welcome back to Plank of the Week, Meghan.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't seen you for a while. You're going to have to try a little bit harder, though, I think. So, we could give it to Kemi Badenoch, couldn't we? Who seems to have made the political sort of blunder of the year so far. And we have yet to see what Nigel Farage's reaction is going to be. But, I mean, you can be sure that it's not going to be good for her,
no.
Is it?
She's going to regret what she did.
And since we all agree, I think, that she didn't need to do it, that is pretty plankish behaviour, isn't it?
I agree.
So I think we give it to Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, supposedly, the leader of the Tory party, supposedly. I'm sorry, Kemi. I did enjoy meeting you, but I'm afraid you're Plank of the Week.
Be the last time you.
We'll be back next week with what is going to be a very exciting show because it's going to be, thanks to Russell Quirk, actually, the 5th anniversary show. Russell was on the first ever Plank of the Week, filmed in this very studio before we had all this glamour. And so, Russell, you'll be on it. I don't know who else is going to be on it yet.
I can't wait. And apparently Chuck Thomas has a surprise for me, the transformation of Russell Quirk over 5 years.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be
Are you
good.
transitioning?
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, Ben, in some ways. We're all over-minded here, aren't we?
Yeah, you used to have a lot less hair.
There you go.
That's another matter. Anyway, thank you very much indeed, Russell. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, for heaven's sake, Howard. It's all good. It's all good. Plank of the Week, Kemi Badenoch. Welcome to 2025.